it's so frustrating because no, I'm serious. I'll come out of class and I'll be just like, they did it again. They like to, I mean, a topic is obviously that's been happening in current events is like, the violence that we saw this summer. And they say that it is Trump supporters and white supremacists who are synonymous to them, agitating and causing violence against and inciting violence against these left-wing groups. And that actually it's not BLM or Antifa at all. It's actually white supremacists who are either inciting it and going and like counter protesting them, or they're staging it and trying to pretend like they're Antifa or BLM and then cause violence. I mean,
and these are the people who are probably going to write the history, and they're going to write it that it was conservatives, Trump supporters that were engaged in violence.
Yeah.
Couldn't be further from the truth.
And it's so frustrating to me because I was in Kenosha, Wisconsin this summer. I mean, I was there the whole time. I was there at night. I was there during the day. And I know who was causing the violence there. I literally watched these people pull up in a blacked out, like a van with their license plates blacked out and a cob and BLM written all over it. And they got out with riot gear and explosives, and they were ready for a raucous night to cause mayhem and to cause problems. And so, for them to say, oh, it's Trump supporters and white supremacists who are doing this, it's blatantly false. And it's really unproductive, because we're never going to solve the problem if we're lying about who's causing the violence.
And by the way, if these were Trump supporters, if these were conservatives,
we would denounce them.
100%, we would denounce them. If they were going to a Biden rally with riot gear and fireworks and knives and guns and creating violence, wholeheartedly condemn them. But the left won't do that to Biden voters who are doing this stuff on the street. So it's frustrating. But again, we need action from our mayors and our police chiefs and our law enforcement. And again, I think law enforcement is trying to do what they can, but they're responsive to their mayors, and their mayors are very liberal and they're supportive of this kind of upheaval in their street. So too bad.
So let's do a shift for a second. We'll talk about CNN, because this is actually kind of related. It's the way that the media has treated the president, has treated Trump supporters in general, in just blatantly biased and unfair ways. And so last week, a reporter at CNN, she's a British reporter, made the comparison between Donald Trump and genocidal Nazi Germany. So she basically compared it to the Night of Broken Glass, which is it's a shifting point in German Nazi history, right? So basically, before this point, under Hitler, there had been discrimination against Jewish Germans, but it had been mostly nonviolent. This was a night where there was burning of businesses and homes, and a little under 100 people were killed. And from that point on, the message was really violence against Jewish Germans. And so it was a really horrible night. And this reporter remembered this anniversary.
Amanpour.
Yeah, she remembered this night, this horrible night in German Jewish history, and compared it to the Trump administration.
Listen, I got to, nothing makes me more angry than left-wing liberals trying to make that comparison, because what has Donald Trump done, right, that is going to make them compare him to Nazi Germany, to Hitler? Donald Trump has not tried to consolidate power in Washington, consolidate power for himself. He hasn't done that. He's actually tried to decentralize power out of Washington, give it back to states, give it back to communities. He's decentralized that power and given more power back to people at a more local level, which is exactly contrary to what the Nazis were doing. Donald Trump hasn't been involved in violence. It's been the left that's been involved in violence. And I just think, I think Democrats were angry that Trump did a couple things. One, he got out of the Paris Climate Accord, which was a bad deal for America, because we had our requirements very early on, a few years into the agreement, where places like China didn't have to have any restrictions on their carbon emissions for 30 years. It would put handcuffs on America, but not on China. And it was a very huge competitive disadvantage for us. Trump got out of the Iranian nuclear deal, which was stupid. Biden and Obama gave, billions of dollars to the lead sponsor of terror in the world, Iran, and was going to allow them to get nuclear weapons. So he got out of that deal. He's renegotiated. President Trump trade deals with China, but also with our trading partners in North America, Canada, and Mexico. great thing for Americans. He's enforced our law on the southern border on immigration that the Congress, Republicans and Democrats have passed.
Yep.
He's allowed for pipelines to be built to move American energy around our country to be refined. And so we have lower energy costs and we're not beholden to any energy in the Middle East. What's wrong with that? Those are all things that have made our country stronger and better and more prosperous. And they call Donald Trump a Nazi? I mean, it is the most outrageous thing. And did you see, has the Jewish community, has the state of Israel, anyone pushed back on CNN for this?
Yeah, I mean, so I read several articles of Jewish organizations who were pretty outraged by it. I mean, it's disrespectful to the Jewish community. It was a horrible night in German Jewish history, and it's really disrespectful, and it shows that there's a really kind of a disconnect between the media and what's appropriate, because any person who's looked at this administration, any rational person will say, yeah, genocidal Nazi Germany is a lot worse than the Trump administration, even if you don't like Trump. And so there's just a real disconnect and a real, I think, lack of historical perspective and respect that we're seeing at CNN.
It cheapens the history of this night.
Right.
It was horrific. It was a turning point, and it's a big deal for the Jewish community. And to cheapen it by comparing it to 4 years of what was a great economy, again, where a lot of people did much better under this economy, and it was a decentralizing of power, letting people keep more of their tax dollars. That makes rightfully the Jewish community angry, because you shouldn't cheapen the history of this horror that happened in Nazi Germany.
I think that people look at the comparison and other, just ludicrous things that people at CNN and MSNBC and elsewhere have done, and they just kind of say, wow, these people are out of touch. And they, and we're actually seeing it in large scales. Ben Domenech and Emily Jasinski wrote a story on this at the Federalist, basically saying, like, legacy media is dying. People don't trust them anymore. People don't have cable anyways anymore, and they're moving to other outlets to get their news from. And we're seeing that more so than ever. I mean, if you ask me, where do I get my news? I mean, I listen to podcasts and I read the Federalist, and but I'm never like turning on CNN to get my daily news. And I think that's true for a lot of people, especially young people.
I turn on Fox. I'm old school. I'm not doing as much of the podcast, but I do think that what's happening in mainstream media is it's shock media, shock reporting. It's not news anymore. Mm-hmm. And when there's no guardrails in these left-wing networks, it's just who can say the most shocking thing, more shocking than the last person that was on in the previous hour. Yeah. And it's shock. And all of a sudden they're just saying crazy radical stuff that is not anchored in any reality and not anchored in any kind of news reporting. Yeah. And again, that's why I think you've seen so much of the left-wing media buy into this leftist agenda, which is, we can call it socialist. It's on the verge of communist. This is bad stuff on our doorstep. And we would hope that the media would call this out for a more traditional, balanced approach, like we've seen in our history. We don't see that right now coming from the Democrat Party or from the media.
Well, we don't. So we're probably not going to see a change in the likes of CNN anytime soon. But we might if they start hurting from the competition that they'll get from other media outlets.
Or unless if they're sold. If there's been rumors that AT&T might sell CNN. They own CNN. They sell it. Who knows who buy it? And maybe they give it a makeover. Maybe they'll get a few more viewers on their network if they're a little more fair on MSNBC or CNN. So crazy times right now. But I just have my last point I'm going to give you guys. Mm-hmm. Trump is going to fight on, and he's going to investigate on. And if he feels comfortable that he's lost, he's going to concede, and you're going to see a peaceful transfer. Mm-hmm. But I think we all need to give the president time and space to look at what happened and make that determination. And I think the 72 million Americans who voted for him want to give him that time as well. And I think Joe Biden, Democrats, should actually give that time and space, because it's going to make people feel a lot better if Joe Biden is sworn in, that we were given this time to make sure that this was a legitimate election, or at least feel a little bit better. I always feel perfect about it, but feel better than the president had the time to look into it. Yeah. So there you go.
With that, it was good talking to you, Jeff.
From Z to A. A to Z, X to Z.
Z to X.
That's what we're X to Z to X. Sorry. I'm going to get it right one of these days.
All good.
All right.
See you guys next time.
Bye-bye.